Have you ever been told that you are too independent, that you don't let people in, that you're cold, possibly, emotionally unavailable? Have you ever felt like I'm just exhausted with relationships? People misunderstand me, and sometimes I just feel like it's best not to let people in. Maybe I don't need close relationships. At least that's the lie you tell yourself. If any of that sounded familiar, then I think you are struggling with a dismissive avoidant attachment style. But here's the thing. I want you to lean in, get ready to take some notes, and to feel encouraged because it's not something that you just have to live with. There is hope. And today, I'm going to be breaking down what a dismissive avoidant attachment style truly is, where it could possibly have came from in your childhood. I'm also going to be providing a biblical example because this is a faith-based channel. And then lastly, what you clicked on this thing for, I'm going to be giving you some tools. How can I rewire my brain, my attachment system, my nervous system? And so if any of that sounds very much like what you need, I hope you keep on watching. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, All Things Jesus. I am Adriana if you are new here, and if you aren't, then thanks for coming back. I'm diving right into it. I am a licensed professional counselor and also a girly who loves Jesus, and this is my channel where you will find all things Jesus, hence the title. Also, mental health and lifestyle videos, and today this is a mental health video, and we're going to jump right into what is dismissive avoidant attachment style. I have my notes in my phone, guys, because I don't want to go off on a tangent. So if you see me looking down, that's where I am looking. But to start, you probably may already be familiar with this. A dismissive avoidant attachment style is one of the four main attachment styles. So you have a secure attachment, anxious, dismissive avoidant, or disorganized. So those are the four types. And when it comes to dismissive avoidant attachment style, it can have a few ways in which it came to be when it comes to childhood and development and John Bowlby and attachment. All of this stuff that we know about attachment style comes from attachment theory. But to break it down in a very succinct way, it is a deep desire for independence, right? A struggle with vulnerability. I wrote down here, also struggling with emotional closeness and a tendency to shut down rather than want to engage in deep connection, which is different from a secure attachment or an anxious attachment, and even disorganized, because disorganized is a combination of the two. So a combination of being anxious and then at times being dismissive and avoidant. So let's dig deep into how does this form? Well, first of all, it forms as a defense mechanism. And if this is a style that you have, I really want you to hear my heart speaking to you and not demonizing you. There is so much rhetoric out there when it comes to the attachment styles, and it seems like a dismissive avoidant attachment style has just gotten a bad rap. And I want to dispel that for you and help you to see it's rooted in trauma and that you can't help what happened to you in your childhood. But later on in the video, you can see what you have the responsibility to do now as an adult. So how is it formed? It's a way for you to protect yourself from emotional pain. You might not even realize, you might not even realize that you're doing it because it's something that's so deeply ingrained in you and you may have learned to do from a very young age. So I have some examples down here. Distance has felt normal to you for a very long time. And so when people get close to you, sometimes that's very scary and it can threaten your sense of autonomy and independence. Is there anything else I want to say for this particular part? And that you obviously struggle in relationships and have an inability to receive the love that you actually desire and the support that you desire. So one of the big questions is, well, then how did this happen? How did I get a dismissive avoidant attachment style? So some of the research suggests that in childhood, particularly with caregivers who were emotionally unavailable or caregivers who were just aloof, maybe, and dismissive or even harsh toward their child's emotional needs. So you may have had a parent with even some of my clients who I coached through this and counseled through this, you may have had a parent who didn't realize that they were not meeting your emotional needs. And they thought that, oh, my child is just so super independent, that you then took that on as a badge of honor because they said, this is my golden child, so to speak. They don't need a lot of reinforcement. Maybe you were a child who grew up in a household with a troubled child, so to speak, and your parents were always doing things or going up to the school. And so you just took on this innate just independence. I'm going to do everything right. But you had to suppress your emotional needs, and your parent didn't realize you were suppressing them. And so they gave you this, like I said, badge of honor for being independent. So that's one thing. And I don't think some people realize that that's where this attachment style can come from, because they're always thinking about, no, this parent must have been harsh toward them, or they weren't there for them at all. But sometimes parents unknowingly do this because they give the child the title of just, like I said, the golden child, and being good and not needing much, but everybody needs something. So I wanted to give you guys that standpoint. But then also, you might have been that child that when you reached for connection, right? When you wanted to feel like there was a sense of co-regulation. That's what I provide my clients in therapy. That's what people who are close to you can do, help you to regulate. So yes, you're doing it yourself, but there's also someone just like listening to you or holding your hand or just being there and being a safe presence, You didn't have that. You didn't get that comfort. There was an indifference there. So that could be why you suppress your emotional needs. So picture this, a little boy falls, and maybe he's 5 years old, and his dad sees him falling, and the little boy is now crying, he's in tears. His little knee is scraped up, and his father is like, you'll be all right. Keep it pushing. And that happens repeatedly. So now the brain is wired. Oh, well, why cry? If something happens, I'm not going to get my emotional needs met. I'm going to be told to, man up, and whatever the case may be. It doesn't have to just be for a little boy, but that's just one of the examples. And so now you quickly learn that expressing pain leads to shame, not support. Come on, you're supposed to be a little man. You were supposed to be a child, a kid, but that's what now you're being shaped. So this little boy stops asking for comfort. But the issue is, and this could be a little girl too, I don't want to put this solely on men. The issue is that once this child grows up, and then maybe they have a partner or they have a friend, it doesn't even have to be romantic, who is seeking emotional closeness from them, or they're wanting to know, how do you really feel? You are transparent, but you're not always vulnerable with me. I don't understand your heart. They truly can't understand. You watching this video might be like, you're right. I can't connect that way because I've long ago suppressed those things. I don't need to talk about it. And so that is just genuinely what can happen. And you can feel like you're fine. Why are you bringing up these things? Why do I need to meet your needs in this way? You're going to be all right. Okay, so the emotional wall that once protected this child is now the very thing that is preventing him or her from actually developing and harnessing the relationships that they deeply desire. And so again, I just want to bring it home here that this is not about blame. And like social media and all the things people say, if you're in a relationship with a dismissive avoidant, just stop altogether. They're never going to be fixed. This is not what this is about. It's not about blame, but it is about awareness. And so I hope that example can lead you to think about, where did this happen in my childhood? Because maybe that story is not your story, but I want you to even think about it before you go on in this video. How was my attachment style shaped? Do I have any seminal moments I could think about in my mind where, wow, unknowingly my parent did this, and this has given me as I tell my clients, a negative core belief. And so it might be like, whenever I ask for help, this will happen. And it's something that's negative. And so now that's how you live your life. You're never asking for help because you have this negative core belief. So you get the point. But I just want you to think about that. What is hindering you now as an adult? And you can literally pinpoint it and go back into moments of time. This is powerful. I've done this with clients. And the tears were just flowing, and they were like, I never thought about this time. And they're vividly giving me memories, and we're able to, tap in and to process that. So dismissive avoidant attachment doesn't mean that you dislike people. You don't dislike people. You want to be loved just like the rest of us. You want to be in relationships, but it's hard. It's hard. So what does it look like in adulthood? Dismissive, avoidant people crave deep connection, but vulnerability feels unnatural. Unnatural. And so here are some signs, and I'm just going to read them right as they are. Extreme independence is one of the signs that you display. Avoiding relying on other people. I'm just self-sufficient, I don't need that from another person. I can do that on my own. 2, struggles to express emotions or needs. So that's similar with that hyper independence. 3, feels annoyed or sometimes even suffocated when others want closeness. You can't understand, like, why you want to be on me like that. A fourth thing that I wrote down here is sometimes genuinely you don't even know what to do when your partner is asking for that closeness. So you're not grossed out by it or, irritated or annoyed, but you're actually scared. Like, I genuinely don't know how to provide the closeness that you're asking me for. And so what I've seen is because you don't know how to attune, because you haven't been attuned to, then you might flake. I've seen that. Or you might be very dismissive and cold, not knowing that that's a defense mechanism. If I shut down and I get cold and distant, they're not going to ask me anymore. They're not going to want to rely on me anymore. So it's really coming out of a fear. Most people don't really, I think, notice that, but I want to alert you to that truth. It's not always just being mean or cold. There's a fear there that I don't know how to show up for this person. So where am I at? Did I have 4? Okay, so 5 is withdrawals or shuts down an emotional conflict. So you probably can, attest to that or agree with that. And 6, unknowingly causes hurt by being emotionally unavailable. If you have related to anything that I've said thus far, I want you to know that you are not broken. You're not broken. Sometimes some of these things can feel like weighty. I don't sound like a great person when I hear it said back to me, but you are not broken. Trauma has threatened to break you, has tried to break you, but there is hope in Christ. You may be carrying a weight that you were never meant to carry alone. Go all the way back to those memories in childhood. Nobody as a child was supposed to be independent. If any time in life, that's where you were supposed to be dependent. You shouldn't have learned that I have to do everything on my own. And so now you're carrying that weight even more because as a believer, and I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll get down to that. But you are supposed to be able to depend on community. God did not create man to be alone. I just want you to know that you're not alone. And whether you realize it or not, your avoidance isn't just affecting you, which is probably why you might have clicked on this video. It's not just affecting you, but it's affecting deeply the people that you love and the people who want to show you love, but you don't know how to receive it. And that brings me to the next point in this video, which is the biblical example of Jonah. Yes, you probably know about Jonah. He's the guy that everybody knows as getting swallowed by a big fish or being in the belly of a whale. And I was thinking about what can I use? If you watch some of my other videos, I've used examples, biblical examples that you probably wouldn't normally think of with these attachment styles. But the Lord is just like highlighting certain characters and their tendencies. So let's read Jonah 1:1-3. Jonah flees from the Lord. The word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai. I'm not sure. Go to preach to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it because its wickedness has come up before me. But Jonah ran away from the Lord. He headed to Tarshish. He went down to Joppa where he found a ship bound for that port. After paying the fare, he went abroad and sailed for Tarshish to flee from the Lord. So the Lord gave him a clear directive to go to Nineveh but he said, I'm going in the opposite direction. I'm going to Tarshish. And so he ran not only to avoid, I think, his calling, but to avoid something that was very deeply uncomfortable for him. He figured the Ninevites are evil, wicked people. They deserve everything that they are getting. And if you go back into that story, it's very interesting, actually, where this comes from and how the Lord spared them previously, and then they turned around and did the same thing again. So Jonah was actually right. They didn't listen. But anywho, he still was putting others in danger with his avoidance. So let's dig into that a little bit deeper. When Jonah boarded, the ship to escape, which I just read, a violent storm hit. And I want you to take time to read through if you aren't familiar with this story. But in the essence of time, I'll let you do that on your own. And the sailors were terrified. They were like, why is this coming upon us? They didn't even know God, but they were like, something is wrong, and we're casting lots, and we're going to figure out who exactly is bringing this, damnation upon us. They were able to desperately start throwing the cargo overboard, trying to survive. Meanwhile, Jonah was below the deck and was chilling. I think he might have been asleep. Yes, he was asleep, completely disengaged, completely unaware of what his actions were bringing onto other people. And so this is what I want you to hone in on. And again, this is not to condemn you or to make you feel bad, but this is just a blaring example of what it can look like for your actions to deeply affect those around you. And so his avoidance was causing other people panic, okay? And that's what avoidance does. It doesn't just, so-called protect you, because I know you're thinking that that's what it's doing. Anybody who's employing some type of, coping mechanism, even if it's maladaptive, you think it's protecting you, it's helping you, but it is causing a storm and wreckage in the path of all of those who are around you. And that's what was happening. An emotional storm you're pulling others into that they did not ask for. And I want you to think about how maybe you have been doing that in your lifetime because of avoiding certain things or avoiding going towards the discomfort. So Jonah finally admitted the truth, right? Pick me up. This is Jonah 1:12-15. Pick me up and throw me in the sea. I'm like, wow. I don't know if I would have had the heart to say that. And the sea will become calm for you. I know that this is my fault, that this great storm has come upon you. I'm like, wow, that took a lot. So he recognized that his avoidance was hurting other people, avoiding and going in the opposite direction because he was avoiding God. I don't want to do what you're telling me, and I don't want to have a hard conversation with you that I don't want to do what you're telling me. So I'm just going to go in the opposite direction. So he realized that his avoidance was hurting other people, but there's a grace in this story. And that's what the Bible provides for us as believers. There's always some grace, something to be learned from it that we can take and put on our lives. God didn't abandon Jonah. Yes, there was consequences. He was swallowed up in the belly of a whale. But even in his running and his avoidance, God provided a way out. And a way back. And he does the same for you. And so I want you to think about what your moment of being swallowed in the belly of a whale looks like. Has there been consequences? Have you lost someone who you really did love and cherish, but you didn't know how to show them that? Are you maybe in a relational dynamic now and you're like, I see the wreckage. I see how some of my behaviors have deeply harmed them. In my other video, when I talked about anxious attachment style, I was putting it on myself and other people with that attachment style to realize how sometimes you are putting your anxiety on other people. You are causing people to pay for things that they never actually even have done to you, but because of your past and not dealing with that. So I want you to think about that for yourself. All right, we took a lot of time there, and I pray that that gave you just a different perspective that you may not have had previously. So what are some triggers? How do you get to the moment of Jonah, right? Because before then, he's a prophet. God has chosen him, and he was going to go do something, holy for the Lord. But what made him get to that point? What was his trigger? So we're going to talk about what are your possible triggers. And this is not an exhaustive list, so some of yours may not be on here, but think about that for yourself. If you have a dismissive avoidant attachment style, certain things are going to trigger you. as a human being, certain things are going to trigger you, but making you want to shut down or withdraw. And some of these look like feeling pressure to open up emotionally. So if somebody is like really trying to get you in a dating situation to maybe open up, or a really close friend, they think that they're very close to you and they're like, why don't you ever tell me about yourself or how you're really feeling? That could be a big, point of pressure for you, a trigger. A partner expressing deep emotional needs, being criticized for being distant, or criticism within itself can be a big trigger. I have seen this happening with my own eyes, because there is sometimes some deep insecurities happening, even though you don't let that on, because everybody thinks that you're just this very confident and self-assured person, but you have some concerns as well. I like to say this to flip side of the same coin of those who have an anxious attachment style. You still have fears. And that's why sometimes you push people away, because your fear is that someone is going to harm you. They're not going to show up for you the way that you want them to. Okay. So I'm getting ahead of myself. The next thing is conflict requiring emotional engagement rather than just your logic. And we're going to get into that as well. Fear of being trapped in a relationship or trapped in some sort of like emotional pain. You don't want to feel that. Those are some triggers. And when these triggers hit, you have your brain has now tricked itself into thinking that avoidance is the catch-all. I gotta get away from this thing at all cost. And in life, right, especially when you think about like, I guess, behavioral psychology, there's always a function of behavior. So I always tell my clients, don't demonize yourself. Let's think about, what is the function of behavior? What are you trying to get away from? And that's what you're usually doing. It feels like avoidance is the safest option. That is the function of behavior. I want to get out of here safely. But when healing comes, you can choose to stay. You don't have to run to Tarshish like Jonah. I've talked about where this comes from and the biblical aspect of it. But then from my clinical perspective as a licensed professional counselor, what does this look like? What is some of the evidence, the scientific evidence saying? And I also want you to know that whatever I say, also take it back, do your own research, and think about, is God calling you to get your own licensed professional to help you through this journey? Nothing that I am saying is foolproof. And always, go back and do your own research. Studies show that about, I think 25% of people, and you might have to check that stat, but have an avoidant attachment style, because it could have changed, science changes over time. That means that 1 in 4 people struggle with intimacy, with vulnerability, and I also have down here with emotional closeness. So it's just downright difficult. And avoidants, ironically, often find themselves in relationships with anxious attachers. And so it just keeps that cycle going, right? Nobody is actually transferring over to secure, because they're in relationships that just rev up their attachment styles. And so anxious attachers are those who crave like deep emotional connection and attunement and fear abandonment. So you can already guess that's probably really difficult for yourself if you've been in a relationship with someone who is asking for things that you can't readily give, or you don't yet know how, but we're going to get there. Now, from a brain perspective, neuroscience, it is very interesting. And I'm actually going to read exactly how I wrote it, because I think that this is fascinating. From a brain science perspective, dismissive avoidant attachment isn't just a personality trait, right? It's not something that you just, are waking up with and born with, but it's something that gets deeply wired into your nervous system. So studies show that people with this attachment style have an overactive prefrontal cortex. So this is like the thinking brain. This is where you do, I think, higher order functioning and problem solving skills. But specifically, the medial prefrontal cortex is overactive, meaning that you are relying more on your logic. And I didn't have to give you those fancy words for you to know that, but relying more on your logic and suppression rather than emotional processing. Let me read that sentence again. Meaning that you rely more on logic and suppression, right? Locking everything up rather than emotional processing. And this is why you may tend to intellectualize. That is one of the signs of someone who might have a dismissive avoidant attachment style. Is very logical, very intellectualized, is never really going deeper on the emotional side of things. And so rather than feeling your emotions, you intellectualize them. Your brain prioritizes control over vulnerability, which helps you to suppress emotions. And you also have a less responsive amygdala, which is responsible for our emotions, right? And how we're, taking them in and processing emotions, meaning that you don't react as strongly to emotional closeness as someone who has, a strong, sense of their amygdala working. Also, the brain's reward system is also less active when receiving love and affection. So this is deep, right? Which is why independence feels safer than deep connection, because your reward system, the pleasure pathways in the brain, is not wired to actually see it as a reward. And on top of that, there's research to suggest that you also have a lower oxytocin sensitivity. And oxytocin is just what they call it, the bonding or the love hormone, making it harder to feel emotionally bonded to people. And this could be for a number of reasons, and I'm not going to bore you with that, but it probably goes back to childhood. And, a lot of children get that oxytocin from their mother when breastfeeding and, all of those different things to feel strongly bonded. But here's the good news. In all that I've just stated, right, the brain does have the capacity to change. It can. You can, rewire it with intentional healing. And I wrote down here, through safe relationships, through emotional awareness, which I pray you're getting through this video, and stress regulation. It's possible to rewire the patterns and help you to build healthier connections. All of that being said, how do we heal? If all of these things that you've heard, you're like, yes, that's me. Yep, that's me too. Yep. So what do I do about it, Adriana? Let's talk about it. I know this video is pretty long, but I think I'm just going to put it all in this one video instead of breaking it up and saying, come back if you want some tips. So take a break if you need to, or keep on going right through it. I want to say, if you clicked on this video and your attachment style might not be dismissive avoidant, but you love someone who has that attachment style, I want to look you right in your eyes and tell you that it's not your job to try to fix them. It's not your job to try to berate them and use what I'm saying in this video to weaponize them and say, I've learned all of these different things and this is what you do. It's not that. But it's just your job to then hold space for them. You can't heal them. They have to walk through this journey on their own, but you can be a safe space, right? You can try to provide love in a way that is baby steps for them to receive it. So I just wanted to say that I wrote that down here because I know it's a buzzword, right, with attachment styles nowadays, and especially with dismissive avoidant and people wanting to learn more maybe about their partners. You cannot change them, but you can be a source of safety. I don't want you to think that you are the bad guy of the attachment, styles. If this dismissive avoidant attachment style is one that you have, somewhere along the line, you learned that emotions were burdensome, vulnerability was unsafe, and needing people means that I will be disappointed. But how do you heal? How do you break free? And I want you to know that none of these things are just foolproof. Okay, if I do this 1, 2, 3, 4 step, I'll be healed miraculously. No, it takes intention. It takes work. It takes prayer. And the first thing that I want to say is invite God into your attachment healing. I know it might sound simple and sophomoric, but this is what I start with every attachment style that I have addressed. You need God. You need the supernatural power of the Holy Spirit to help you along this journey. If you struggle with avoiding attachment, chances are you struggle with trusting God too. Not necessarily that you don't believe in him. I'm not saying that to you. But what I am saying is you might struggle with trusting him with your heart. And think about it. If you spend so much time being hyper independent, you didn't feel like you could really depend on your parents, who I know most of us, we love our parents, right? Even if they have done some things that we don't agree with, that were hurtful, most of the time you deeply still love your parents. But if you felt like they couldn't be there for you, sometimes you ascribe that same belief, that negative core belief, onto God. And so I just want you to think about that. If you've learned that closeness is equals risk, then that could affect how you attach to the Lord himself. So I just want you to be honest with God, right? One of the things I wrote down here is to pray. God, I don't always trust you with my heart, but I want to. I want to lead me in that. Help me to see you in ways I have never seen you before because I've been afraid and I've been doing things on my own accord. So I've been living a very safe life. It may be cool. I may have gotten some of the things that I want, but I haven't been living exceedingly and abundantly beyond all I can ask, think, or imagine according to your power that works within me, because I haven't allowed you to truly do things that will blow my mind because of my dependence on you. So I just want you to be honest with that, right? Be honest about the pain that closeness has caused you. And I have Psalm 34:18. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. One of my favorite verses. God can do that for you. God can do that for you. I don't care what your mother or your father or whoever was your early attachment figure, what they did or what they did not do. God can stand in the gap. He can heal your heart. So see God's pursuit of you as gentle and not forceful. Just like with Jonah, I know that might have seemed like, oh, that was a big consequence, but he still allowed him to get spit up out of that belly of that well, and he did not die. He was able to go on and do what the Lord had asked him to do. And people repented. So healing starts with believing that real love will stay. God stayed. He didn't say, you know what, I'm going to get another prophet because he didn't do what I told him to do. No, God went after him in Tarshish when he was supposed to be in Nineveh. So wherever you're supposed to be, God still will come after you where you are, right? To get you back there. Okay, I don't want to belabor the point too much. The last thing I have on this particular point is to reframe surrender as safety and not loss. Avoidance, you know this about yourself, you might equate dependence with weakness. So, but depending on God isn't losing yourself. It's gaining a foundation where you don't have to carry everything on your own. As a woman, a Black woman, sometimes I can struggle with being, overgiver, overdoer, and thinking I have to do everything on my own, Miss Independent, right? And so I know what that feels like from a different standpoint. And I have had to learn to acquiesce to the Lord. He's not asking me to be independent. He's asking me to be childlike, to be dependent. So you have to rewire the brain to know I am a child of God, not an adult of God. Not a dismissive avoidant of God, but a child of God. And I can depend on him, even when it's scary. And so I just want you to look at a scripture, 2 Corinthians 12:9, where it tells us that we can actually boast in our weakness. You don't have to see your dependence on God as weak. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly in my weakness, so that Christ's power may rest on me. So that's something to really, I think, meditate upon. 2, move toward discomfort, but in a way that feels safe. And I'm going to speed through some of these guys. I think my camera might be about to die, and I don't want, that to happen to us. So if you're avoidant, emotional intimacy can sometimes feel like a threat. I said that earlier. You can feel like your autonomy is being threatened. You're being smothered. You just want your independence. And that's okay, but not to the point where it is unhealthy or maladaptive. So instead of jumping straight into the deep end of vulnerability, right? Never really talking about your feelings and then just saying your deepest, darkest secrets. I don't want you to do that. We want you to go with something that we call in psychology like exposure therapy, right? So it's like baby steps for your nervous system. Start with micro moments of intimacy. I wrote down here, instead of, like I said, going from never opening up to spilling your soul, start with something small. Maybe you might say, you know what, to a close friend of mine, or maybe you're dating, I will say how my day went. I don't normally even talk about those things. That's just something I don't like. What I need to tell somebody about my day for. But maybe you can open up and say, today was a good day. I felt like I was killing it at work today. Or you can go the opposite way. Today was a little bit of a struggle. I was tired. I don't feel like I got enough sleep last night. That is so small, But to someone who wants to connect with you and who feels like sometimes they can't, that will mean so much. So I just want you to try those things, right? Practice leaning in before pulling away. You know what I'm talking about here. Sometimes your instinct is just to withdraw and to pause. You feel, I think, overstimulated. But I want you to ask yourself, what am I afraid will happen if I stay emotionally present for just a little bit longer? I know, might be difficult, but ask yourself that. What is the function of my behavior right now? But what would happen if I chose to push past this discomfort? Then experiment with staying engaged for maybe 10%, whatever that looks like, more than, what you would normally give. I would also add here, use your sharp sense of discernment. The Holy Spirit was putting this on my heart to assess when people truly do have good intentions towards you, because you have this like hypervigilance, right? And you have this way about you. At least I have seen this with people who have this attachment style where you can read people really well. You've learned to do this. And so I want you to use that and remember that you don't always have to see people through the lens of your trauma, but try to see them through the lens of who they actually are. Really discern, what do I see? Because sometimes you might really see danger and you might not need to have a close relationship with that person. But then other times it's like, I'm seeing you through my trauma. You're not a bad person at all. And knowing that they're not your parents, right? That they are trying to be a safe place for you. So I just wanted to put that out there. If sometimes you have a need, maybe start to express it slowly to this particular person or persons that you are deeming to be safe, and seeing, can I build up trust with them? All right, the third thing I want to talk about is reframing independence as strength for connections. So you have this independence about you, and then now you can actually connect in the way that will be helpful for you, a way that is connecting kind of on your own terms. Now, I want to be careful with that. Sometimes you are going to have to bend, right? We all have to compromise in relationships. But when you're starting to learn what can be just a little bit of a stretch outside of your comfort zone, you have that autonomy to choose so. And let me give an example of what I'm saying about that. A lot of avoidants take pride in their independence, and I'm not trying to take that from you, but instead of seeing healing as losing that independence, what if you saw it, like I just said, as gaining, a way to connect on your own terms without fear? So I want you to remember that strength is in community. Ecclesiastes 4:9-10. Two are better than one. If either of them falls, one can help the other up. So think about relationships like a bank account. You don't have to spend all your money, all your energy at one time in one setting. So just like you budget your finances, you can budget your emotional energy. Hence what I'm saying, that you can use now your independence, right? That autonomy as a way to connect, but on your own terms. So investing where it's worth it and keeping your sense of self. I hope all of that makes sense. The last thing I'll say about this point is using parallel play. I think that sometimes you feel overwhelmed because you think you have to be so like, I don't know, immersed in this person or in this particular encounter or this date or whatever the case may be. And you actually sometimes can just take your laptop and go and sit in the presence of the person. You don't even have to talk. Or you can watch a movie, have some nonverbal, connection points. I dated someone in the past who had this attachment style, and I didn't realize how much that parallel play meant, to just be in the same room, but he didn't have to give as much. He didn't have to say as much, but he could be in my presence. So there were stolen glances and, like touches to reaffirm, but it wasn't high level. It was very much, to his level that he could provide. So think about that for yourself. The fourth thing I would say is identify your exit strategies. We all have them, and then replace them. So you have, I think, at times mastered the art of creating distance. So while anxious attachers will employ what we call protest behaviors, you will do deactivating strategies because I'm trying to get you to get away from me. And so often without even realizing it, actually. And the key to your healing is catching yourself in real time and being able to distinguish, oh, wait a minute, I'm about to go to my default setting here and I don't have to. So I'm not going to say all of the things I have down here, but one of the things is over explaining your busyness. So I love to hang out, but I'm just slammed with work. No, you're not. Let's be honest. So something you could say instead is, I value this relationship, but I'm working on showing up in a way that is sustainable for me. And I don't have it in me. So can we do something low key? That is asking for what you need. And it's okay. Is there anything else I want to say? Ghosting or emotionally disappearing. Taking longer to respond. You know when you do this, we can be honest. Pulling away when feeling just, okay, this is getting too close. Try this instead. Set a relationship timer. If you want to withdraw, give yourself, I know this might sound long, but 24 hours before making a decision. Sometimes we just need to hunker down to deal with what we're feeling, to process the emotions, to sleep on it, whatever the case may be. And you probably don't even want to make that same decision. And if you do, that's okay. But this prevents impulsivity, right? And cutting off because you just got a little overwhelmed. 5, work on your receiving muscle. This is something that I know God wants for you. You struggle with receiving, whether it's love, whether it's help, whether it's a compliment, right? Simple kindness. But in your healing process, I want you to know it's not all about giving love better. Because a lot of what we talked about today is you learning how to show up for yourself, right? Praying, checking in with God, checking in with yourself when you're emotionally drained, understanding what my triggers are so I can, self-regulate, self-soothe, ask for what I need. All of those things, right? That does help you to love better. But then it's also about, how do I let love in? This is what it looks like to learn how to receive. So I think that Galatians 6:2 is something that I wrote down here that I wanted you to ponder on. And it reads like this: carry each other's burdens, and in this way, you will fulfill the law of Christ. It's a blessing, right? To allow others to bear in our burdens and to give when we are in need. But a lot of us don't like that. We don't like it. So the next time someone does something for you, pause. Instead of automatically about to reject it, sit for a little bit, sit with the discomfort and say thank you without qualifications. I also wrote down here, and it might sound a little weird, but practice soft eyes in conversations. Avoidance can tend to kind of scan the environment. And I think that you're training yourself, or you have trained yourself, to look for an out in relationships. So instead, I just want to offer that you're not going to look at people with skepticism, but with curiosity, right? And this shifts your brain from seeing connection as a threat to a possible opportunity. Again, go back to what I said about using your keen sense of discernment to know when to lean in and when to pull out. All right. And the last thing I'll say for this point is to say yes to low risk receiving. Let someone hold the door for you. That's not harming anything, right? Except coffee from your coworkers. Just, I have little things down here. The more that you normalize letting in care in small ways, right? The easier it becomes in deeper relationships. I know that was hefty, my friend, and I pray that I have done you some justice, right? And I know that not everything was discussed in this one video, and you can probably, write down below what are some other things you want me to go into. But I really pray that this video was helpful for you. I pray that you have gotten something from it, that the Lord has highlighted some areas where you need to go back to Him, some areas that He wants to heal, if only you would reveal it and actually become aware of it. I just want you to know that avoidant attachment is not a life sentence. Like, oh, I can never change from it, I'm just stuck with it. No, you're not. You can learn to put these skills to work. You can pray and receive God's emotional healing for you. What Jesus did for us was not just for our sins, but even for shame and guilt and every other thing. It's been nailed to the cross, excuse me. And so if this resonated with you, I would say please comment below. What did you take from this video? What do I need to know, to better serve you? Because I have done videos on, every attachment style, and I want to know more, even for those who I counsel, how I can understand the mind better, the heart better of someone with this attachment style. And do I have anything else down here? I think that's it. But I love you. I know I don't know you, but I love you with the love of Christ. And I love you for choosing yourself and clicking on this video and wanting to do better, wanting to know a better way, right? And that better way is choosing Christ. That better way, and I don't mean it as if you don't know him, but choosing to heal, choosing to figure out, okay, this hasn't been working for me, and what's a new way that I can go about living my life and connecting with others. All right, guys. So I hope you come back for another video, whether that's faith-based, if that's mental health, or if that is a lifestyle video. And until next time, whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, or even share this video if it was helpful for you. All right. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.